Today, we're going to talk about why you would want to report your tree and how to do it properly. You guys have been asking this question a lot. You see, when your tree is potted, there are two main reasons why you'd want to report it. The first reason is to keep those roots from circling around inside the pot, which is also called being pot bound. If you don't believe me, take a look at this ficus microcarpa. You can see right here how the roots are circling around inside the pot and actually lifting up the bottom of the pot because it has nowhere else to go. It's trying to grow, but all that growth energy is going into growing these roots instead of growing branches. So the tree is growing wider and wider, but it's not getting taller. And if it continues like this, eventually the roots will run out of room, stop growing altogether. And the tree is now what we call pot bound. At this point, there's nothing more you can do. You got to get a bigger pot. Now, of course, with bonsai, we try to avoid this happening whenever possible, which is why we need to repot our trees. The second reason why we repot is because the soil is completely depleted of nutrients and it is no longer able to sustain the tree. As we water and water again, the soil becomes more and more compacted. And also as the roots absorb nutrients and they die off, they get incorporated into the soil. So both ways we're depleting our soil of nutrients. The only way to replenish this is by adding fresh soil, so that's why we need to repot. The third reason why we repot is to prune those roots that are circling inside the pot. But I already talked about that and how that's part of the first reason. So let's move on to how often you should repot. Well, it depends. It depends on the species of tree, how fast it's growing, and how old it is. If it's a young, vigorous growing species, such as a ficus or larch, then you want to repot them every 1 to 2 years. On the other hand, if you have a slower growing, more mature trees such as a deciduous or evergreen bonsai, then you want to wait about 3 to 5 years before you repot. When should you repot? Well, the best time of year is late winter or very early spring. This is when trees naturally go into dormancy. That's well before they start actively growing. Trees experience the least amount of stress during this time, which means root recovery occurs faster. Let's move on to the most interesting part. How do you know when you should repot? Well, you should ask yourself these 3 questions. No. 1, are the roots circling inside the pot? Number 2, are the roots growing outside the pot? And number 3, is your tree not growing or not growing as well as you want it to? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then it's probably time to repot. What tools will you need? A few simple tools that you'll need are a bonsai tool set, including a root rake, a chopstick, and pruners. Also, you'll need a larger bonsai pot with drainage holes. You'll also need fresh bonsai soil. Depending on the type of tree you have, you may need a tree stand to work on. Lastly, you'll need a sink or bucket to wash off the old soil from the roots. Now let's move on to the actual process of how to repot. Step 1, remove the old soil with the root rake. With the tree out of the pot, gently use the root rake to remove as much of the old soil as possible. If you have a difficult time removing the soil, you can always use the chopstick to help break up the soil and loosen the roots. Just be careful so you don't damage the roots while doing this. Next step, untangle the roots. Once the majority of the soil has been removed, rinse the roots off in the sink or bucket until the water runs clear. This will help remove any remaining soil. It will also help to straighten the roots, which will make it easier to shape them. Once done, lay the roots out flat to get an idea of how much you need to trim. Next, trim the roots. You want to trim approximately 1/3 of the root mass. Focus on trimming the thicker roots, which are the ones that require the most pruning. Try to reduce these by about 30%. Be sure to leave some of the finer feeder roots intact. These will support healthy uptake in the future. Any roots growing in spirals or crossing roots should be removed as well. Once done, re-examine the roots to ensure you have an even distribution of fine and medium-sized roots. Next, anchor the tree in the pot. Place the tree in the pot and center it. Use mesh over the drainage holes to prevent the soil from washing out. If necessary, adjust the position of the tree and add soil around the roots. Press the soil firmly using your fingers or the chopstick to eliminate air pockets. Next, add the soil. Fill the pot halfway with bonsai substrate, then place the tree in the pot. Center it, fill the pot mostly full of soil, leaving a little space at the top for watering. Press the soil firmly using the chopstick to eliminate air pockets. Add more soil if necessary to bring the soil level to the rim of the pot. Once complete, you'll notice that the tree is sitting above the rim of the pot. This is normal with bonsai and is called being above the nursery. You can also bury the top of the root ball, which is called being below the nursery. Either way is fine. However, you need to keep in mind that if you bury the top of the root ball, you'll have to water more frequently. If you buried the top of the root ball, then skip this next step. Otherwise, backfill with soil. Create a small mound in the center of the pot and build up the sides. Create a slight lip around the edge of the pot to retain moisture. Finish by smoothing out the soil. Once complete, give it a thorough watering. Water the tree thoroughly until the excess water drains out the drainage holes. Allow any excess water to drain out. And that's it. Congratulations. You just learned how to repot a bonsai tree. As mentioned earlier, the first reason why we repot is to keep the roots from circling inside the pot. In addition to circling, roots can also lift up the bottom of the pot. Here's a good example of that. You can see here how the roots are lifting up the bottom of the pot. And if you have a more shallow container such as this one, then the roots can actually pop out of the bottom of the pot. Not a good look. That's why you want to report before this happens. Otherwise, you'll need to get a bigger container and start all over again. The second reason we repot is because the soil is completely depleted of nutrients. Just like us, plants need nutrients to stay alive. Nutrients are essential for plant growth and development. They also help plants resist pests, diseases, and environmental stress. Without proper nutrition, plants cannot thrive. Plants absorb nutrients through their roots. The nutrient uptake process starts with the dissolution of solid fertilizer in water. Once the fertilizer is dissolved, the plant can absorb the nutrients through its root hairs. The absorbed nutrients are then transported throughout the plant where they are used for growth and development. The third reason we repot is to prune those roots that are circling inside the pot. Prune any roots that are growing in a spiral or have crossed over each other. Also, any roots growing outside the pot should be pruned as well. When pruning roots, always disinfect your pruners first. To disinfect your pruners, simply wipe them down with a cloth or paper towel that has been dipped in rubbing alcohol or bleach solution. Make sure to prune above the graft union. The graft union is the point where the roots and the trunk meet. Pruning below this point will result in the death of the tree. Before I forget, I want to mention something very important. Never fertilize a newly potted tree for at least 2 weeks after potting. Fertilizers can burn the roots of a tree if applied too soon after potting. This is because fertilizers are concentrated and can damage delicate roots. Always follow the instructions on the fertilizer packaging. Hopefully you learned something today, and hopefully your tree stays healthy and grows strong for many years to come. Thank you for watching. Until next time, happy bonsai hunting.